Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this morning. It's a real privilege and honour to offer a very special welcome to Sir John Kirwan. And thank you, John, for giving up your time to be with us today. It's okay if I refer to you as JK?
Totally. Yeah, like it's, you know, when
voice.
someone uses your first name, you think, wow,
Yeah.
you know, I've been naughty. So JK's fine. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I've got you now. Thanks, mate. Yeah, hey, great to have you here, mate. And look, I know our topic today is mental health in the community, but I think to get to that topic, we've got to have a little bit of a journey through your life to understand the context and how you've got to be such a big mental health advocate in this country. So, you know, let's start as if we could wind the tape back to where you were an 18-year-old playing third grade. I see or read third grade rugby. John Hart picks you in an invitational side, and 12 months later, as a 19-year-old, you're an All Black. How does that happen? How can you remember that? Is it still vivid in your mind that you could have such a transformation in your life so quickly?
Yeah, I think, you know, an incredible time for me personally. There was a couple of moments there that were really important, and my dad played a pretty big role in a couple of those. So I always remember so John Hart was looking to change the game completely. And I think timing often is really, really important. So I feel very fortunate that the game was transforming back then. So John Hart was looking for a different type of winger. So most of the wingers pre my time were probably a little smaller, faster and smaller. And then what John Hart wanted to do was change the game from the ball dying out wide to actually the ball staying alive. So I was very fortunate. He went out looking for that, couldn't find anything that he liked, and he sort of found me in the third grade. I think the other interesting thing is that he made it very easy for me. So all I needed to do was stay on my feet. Right, and so he made it the job pretty simple and keep the ball alive. But I think, you know, my dad was really important in those days. I remember going into Fletcher Challenge. So you got to remember, I'm a butcher boy, right, with my dad. I left school at 15, and you know the old ties that I don't know if any of you guys used to wear them. Obviously, you ladies wouldn't have to wear them, but we used to have those ties with the elastic band, you know.
Yeah.
So Dad says, well, you better take your best tie. We'll get a new one out of the wrapper. We're going to see John Hart at Fletcher Challenge. And, you know, you can imagine me at 18, you know, sort of going into his corner office, and you're waiting by the secretary. And I walked in, and John Hart said, look, I've been looking at your son. We've got a centennial game in 2 weeks. I'd really love him to play in the second side. And my dad said, my son won't be playing in the second side. I'm sort of wanting to kick him, you know, I'm going, Dad, what are you doing? But actually what he said afterwards was, look, if you're going to pick him out of the third grade and put him into the second side, if he makes a mistake, he will never, they will say that he's not good enough. But if he makes a mistake in the first team, then it will just be a mistake. And that's what happened. So very, very quickly, I was in that side, and then it was just this amazing voyage over the next couple of years till I got into the All Blacks at 19.
So do you think that in the modern game that could ever happen again now? Like someone going from not so much even third grade, but as an 18-year-old to a 19-year-old All Black? Do you think that pathway?
I don't think age, you know, if you're good enough, you're old enough. But I think now with and this is probably a discussion for another time, I think that we're streamlining a lot of our sports, and I don't necessarily agree with it. You know, the academies of at 13 and 14 and 15, I think sports is a way of life, and you play professionally for a very short time, but sport, no matter what sport, is about a lifestyle. And you know, some of the schools that are having, you know, the selecting kids at 13 or 14 to be into the academies, I don't necessarily agree with. And I think it was really interesting seeing the Winter Olympics. So you know, the country that won the most gold medals, they don't have any sort of aligned sports until you're 18. And I think that's what we need to get back to as in New Zealand and possibly Australia. You know, forget about the academies, let the kids play, let them play everything. And then I think the cream will come to the top. But what's happening now is, you know, if you're a young kid and you don't get in the academy, what do? You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah, for sure, mate. So All Black at 19, 63 tests that followed from there. So must be some amazing experiences in that part of your journey. Is there any sort of standouts? And I'm not talking specific games or anything, but the experiences that have really had a massive impact on your life.
Yeah, I think rugby had a massive impact on my life, because I don't know what you were doing at 18 and 19.
I've been an All Black, mate.
Yeah, but I guess finding your way about what you wanted to be and who you wanted to be, and, you know, pushing the boundaries of some of your values at times, and just trying to grow up, you know, the best way you could, and try and experiment things and do all sorts of different stuff. Whereas I was thrust into, you know, into the All Blacks, into the limelight, into a way of life when I was still trying to find myself. So I guess I was very, very fortunate. I had some really strong leaders and mentors during that period of time. And so I was forming my values and what I wanted to do as an adult through sort of my late teen years, which will last with you forever. I think, you know, talking about mental health, I probably started having anxiety attacks when I was 13 or 14 and ignored them. So also one of the negatives of growing up during that period was I didn't address my mental health because I didn't really know what it was, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess in those 63 tests, expectations, pressure, you know, the whole thing of the nation sitting on your shoulders, wanting success and all that. Did you feel that, or was that more from the outside looking in? How did that play out in your life?
I think most of my pressure and the way I was acting was internal. And so, you know, when I talk about my mental health and the journey I've been on, one of the greatest things about coming through anxiety and depression the other end is you have to go into yourself and discover some of the things that motivate us. So what I call them my sharks. And so I had a dumb shark, right? I'll take you forward to bring you back, because the story's a little bit out of context. So I wanted to jump out of a window one night while I was on an All Black tour. I'd been hiding my anxiety, and that anxiety had then fallen into a depression. So I was really fortunate that I never planned my own suicide, but I did have suicidal ruminations. And so what I talk about when someone's severely stressed or anxious or depressed, the illness does three things. It takes away your self-esteem, takes away your self-confidence, and it takes away your enjoyment in life. And so, but those three things, when you're in there, you don't realize that that's part of the illness. So I had no confidence. I didn't think I was worthy, and I didn't enjoy anything anymore. So life's pretty shitty. And what I used to do is it was like having this other mind, and I'd be fighting myself every day, just trying to stay alive, really. And so by the end of the day, I'd be incredibly tired and drained and drawn, and it was just a constant fight. It's the most tiring thing I've ever done. I often say to people, a minute feels like an hour feels like a day, and a day feels like a week. And I've been doing this off and on probably for 2 or 3 years. And I just had enough. And I remember the window was open, 10th floor of the Hilton in Buenos Aires, and I just decided to run and jump out. And the guy lying next to me in the room said, "JK, you've got a good heart," and he saved my life. His name was Michael Jones, Sir Michael Jones. Yeah. They call him the Iceman. People say, "Why do you call him the Iceman? You know, is he really cool and calm under pressure?" said, no, he used to smash the shit out of everybody. All over him after the game. But he saved my life. The next day, I played a test match for New Zealand, scored 2 tries, but it was like being in a dream. So it's like watching myself outside of your body. And then I came home and I went to my doctor. The interesting thing was my doctor was the All Black doctor. So we'd been on tour for a month and I never said anything to him. And he said 2 things that really changed my life. JK, it's an illness, not a weakness, right? Because when you're in there, you think it's you think you're weak, you don't think you're good enough. There's a whole lot of different stuff going on. And the second thing he said is, it's called anxiety and depression. I said, wow, it's a something, because my reference to mental health was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that movie.
Great movie.
Yeah. So seriously, I thought if I reached out to someone, I was going to get locked up with Jack Nicholson and the chief, the big American Indian guy, you know. And I can laugh about that shit now, but it was real back then. So that's why I wouldn't talk to her now, because that was my reference. So anyway, you know, this first meeting, Doc says, and you should go and see someone. And I went, what? Go and see someone? What do you mean? I'm not going to see someone. I don't need to go and see anybody. And so what happened was, this is crazy, right? So this is the same guy that's going, you know, 2 or 3 hours in the gym. Loved a mirror too, by the way. Loved a mirror. Yeah. You know, I'd be in the gym for 2 or 3 hours. I loved a massage. I loved getting a massage. You know, I was doing everything I can physically to be the best player in the world, best player that I could be, but I wouldn't do anything with my head. So anyway, you know, I started on antidepressants and I felt like a loser taking those, which was ridiculous again. But anyway, after a few weeks, Doc said, you should go and see someone. Come on. And I wasn't getting any better. I said, okay. So he said he organised the first person that I went to, and I walked in. So when you're in mental health, or when you're recovering from mental health, often I say it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So I go and see this guy and I walk in and he goes, JK, you're a volcano. You've got all this power inside you. Can you feel the power inside you? I don't want to be a volcano. I won't tell you what. I just want to get well, you idiot. Right? So, and I say to people, if you don't connect with someone, because what happens is people go like I did and they don't connect, so they don't go back, or they think it's all wrong. And that's the biggest mistake I made. So I walked out and imagine what I said to Doc. I bloody told you, mate. I told you, you know, it was sort of, I don't want to be a bloody mountain. But anyway, a few weeks later, I still wasn't any better and not recovering. And so I went to another woman called Dr. Louise Armstrong. And she was amazing. The reason I'm here today, one of the reasons I'm here today, is because of the guidance and the way she broke the illness down. So, you know, I walk into her practice and I sit down and she goes, oh, rugby player. I said, yeah, you're a rugby player. She said, what would you do if you had a tight hamstring? And I went, well, I'd stop and stretch it. She said, oh, yeah, okay, nice. You've stopped and stretched and you get up and you keep running and it gets really, really tight. And I said, well, I'd stop. I sit and go to the physio. She said, your brain's no different, you dick. Hey, wow. Gee, okay, I get that. So I've got a hamstring in the head. What's the ice and who's the physio? Yeah. And I knew that alcohol wasn't the ice, because I used to just get hammered, and it used to give me a little bit of relief, probably for an hour or two, and then the next day I'd go back at 100 miles an hour. So I knew that alcohol wasn't the ice. So I went on this journey of understanding my illness, and then I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to be the All Blacks of depression. So attack it like I would a rugby game. So anyway, what happened was I started opening myself up to all sorts of different methods and ways to get well, right? And for example, she said to me, would you like to go to meditation, right? And meditation back then, I mean, yoga back then, people, there's no Lululemon back then. Yoga back there, if you went to yoga in the 80s, you're a dope smoking hippie, right? So it wasn't as easy as today to sort of go and, you know, rock on in there. But so I opened myself up to trying all these things, and meditation is a really interesting one. I can talk about that later. One thing she said to me, well, she changed my life through breathing, and that was really interesting. But a few sessions in, she said, would you like to learn how to do self-hypnosis. And I went, wow, that's freaky. Yeah, I'm into that. I'll give that a whirl. But anyway, what happened is I did this breathing exercise. I was learning how to breathe properly. And in my mind, she said, what did you love doing pre your depression? I said, well, I used to love surfing. So I said, okay, in her mind. So I did this thing with my hand, did this breathing. And then she took me through this hypnotized sort of moment, which was, you know, put your board shorts on, run down the beach with the longboard, feel the water beautiful, paddle out, 2 to 3 foot perfection, surfed really well, you know, even had abs, you know, get out of the water. And I felt fantastic. So depression for me was like this weight on my shoulders and this cloud over my head. And I felt fantastic. And so I thought, wow, this can be one of the tools I put in my day to keep myself incredibly well. So I go home and I said to my wife, wow, I'm gonna try that. So, well, she was my girlfriend back then, now she's my wife. I'll go upstairs and try it a bit earlier because I thought I'm going to put this in my day. So I go upstairs, do the breathing, you know, do this thing with my arm, in my head, put the board shorts on, run down the beach, feel the water beautiful, paddle out, right? 2 to 3 foot perfection, 4 sharks in the water. You know? And I shit myself and get straight out. I don't know if anyone who's listening has actually been in the water with a shark, but I couldn't explain to her raw fear that I was feeling. Like I didn't see any sharks, but I had this fear, right? Yeah. And so the best way I could explain it was my sharks. And so anyway, I go back to her and I said, I'm thinking she's going to look at me like a loony, right? And she looked at me and said, oh no, JK, they're your sharks. And you need to talk to them. You need to get the teeth out of them, and then you need to get them out of the water, right? And I'm going, wow, that's pretty freaky.
Interesting.
So yeah, really, really interesting. So my first shark that I dealt with was my dumb shark. So I would go into a room and I'd feel dumb, right? I'd act a certain way because I felt dumb. And so I left school when I was 15. I'd never passed an exam in my life. You know, so I felt dumb. So do you guys think I'm dumb? It's a good time to say no, JK. You guys think I'm dumb? But it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter because it was my shark.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people say to me, you know, how can I help my friend or my daughter or my son or my partner? You know, because you can see all the beautiful parts of them, but they can't see it in themselves. And I was very much like that. And so, you know, I started to deal with my dumb shark, right? And the first thing I did is I went back into the school system that let me down. But if you spoke to my mum, I let it down. But whoever let everyone down. And I failed again, right? Which was silly. But what I did learn is that I'm a little bit on the dyslexic scale. I have different ways of learning and I think differently. And so I made peace with that shark. And now if you ask me, and I'm doing a seminar with you guys and I write on the wall and I say, I don't even know how to spell that, people, because I don't care, right? I don't care. I've made peace with that shark. And when people say to me, I say, I'm not dumb, I'm just not educated, right? And so I made peace with that. And, you know, obviously I had an imposter shark. And a lot of people who get promoted from salespeople to managers, often middle management, have an imposter shark. And like, for example, I scored a try against Italy in 1987, ran the length of the field. Everyone still talks about it as being one of the best tries in World Cup history. I hated it, right? And at the end of it, I'm thinking, when are they going to find out I'm just lucky? When are they going to find out I'm not good enough, right? And when are they going to drop me? So those sort of 3 things in an imposter syndrome, that's what you're thinking and that's what you're living. I also had another couple of sharks. You know, I had a guilt shark and I had a wannabe liked shark, right? I don't know if anyone's got one of those, but I was acting a certain way because I wanted to be liked. And that's pretty hard when you're running out in front of 50 or 60,000 people because half of them are going to think you're a dickhead. Right? And you can't control that stuff. So what you've got to be able to do is address those sharks and then make peace with them. And then you either decide to change and do some things about those, or you completely make peace with them. So that's where, when I talk about my sharks, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those deeper things within your personality that But the interesting thing about sharks is that if you want to do an Olympic time while swimming, get chased by a shark. You will do an Olympic gold medal time.
It helps.
But you won't win, right? And so the hardest sharks to give up on were those that were making me swim fast. So, for example, the dumb shark as part of my life, you know, it would be a big motivation for me to be a great rugby player because I'd show all you that told me I was dumb, right? But once I made the All Blacks and once I'd proven that I wasn't, you know, dumb to them in my mind, I've still got the shark. So it starts eating me. So the hardest ones to give up are the sharks that help you be who you are or get where you perceived you were through false circumstances, if that makes sense. Well, that was a long answer. Sorry if I'm boring everybody.
No, mate.
Nobody shut up.
Absolutely brilliant. I guess while you're talking, I'm thinking, you know, you're in a pretty tight team environment. And you talk about Michael Jones in the room with you, recognizing that you had an issue there. You know, your illness, was it obvious to your teammates or the coaching or anything like that? You know, there were the signs weren't there or the people could pick it up, or
No, we hide it. Right? Anyone who's got anxiety and depression, you know, we can hide it because I can normally tell by someone's eyes if I talk to them and look them in the eyes now. There's a dullness about it, but you hide it. You can't notice it. And that's one of the biggest problems with this illness. And, you know, one of the other problems and one of the reasons why, you know, I co-founded Groove is because the world has overtaken us. The world's technology, all these things in our lives we are not prepared for the modern world we live in mentally. Right. So when I say mentally is that we have more inputs in our brain in one day today than our parents and grandparents had in a lifetime.
Wow.
So any of you that have got grey hair and not blonde hair anymore, right? I toured with the All Blacks and never had a cell phone. You know, I used to ring home once a week. That's how old I am. However, you would get natural breaks, right? And so I say, you know, my dad went home at 5 o'clock in the evening and nothing followed him. He went home at 5 o'clock on a Friday night, nothing followed him. You know, he used to make soup in the winter on a Saturday morning and go to footy at Carlo Park on a Sunday, right? Put up your hands if you do emails after dinner nowadays, you know. Put up your hands if you're catching up on emails on a Sunday morning. And please don't tell me you take this to the toilet.
Yeah.
Please don't tell me you take this to the toilet. It's not invited to the toilet. Take a book. Right. Yeah. But so this thing here is amazing. I love it. You know, I haven't seen my son for 3 years and I see him on video yesterday, but we haven't been giving the mental health tools to deal with this modern world. So the great thing and the luckiest thing for me was because I was unwell all those years ago, I had to learn a daily mental health plan to keep myself from going from, you know, to make sure I went from just surviving, because that's what I was doing, just surviving, to thriving. And so those tools are really, really important, and they need to be taught to our children today and also to all of you on this call, because technology has overtaken us. So we've got to learn those things. You know, we've got to learn off those switch off mechanisms. We've got to learn how to make sure that we recharge. I mean, I read a book, right? So I had to teach myself how to read. So I read my first book at 18. It was called The Paladin. Wayne Smith gave it to me, by the way. And it took me about 5 weeks to read it because I had to teach myself how to read, and it'd take me a couple of pages. But anyway, I'm an avid reader now. But during my depression, Dr. Louise gave me a book called Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, right? And it's boring as batshit. Please don't tell the author, because it's quite scientific, but I'll sum it up for you in a paragraph so you don't have to pay the $29.99. So please don't tell the author if you meet him. So there's a zebra on the savannah desert and it's eating grass, right? Out of the bush comes a lion trying to eat it for breakfast, and they have this massive chase, right? And the zebra gets away. What does the zebra do? Goes back to eating grass, right? What do? We spend the rest of our day worrying about the lion in the bush, right? And a lion in the bush is actually the 50 emails you've got to do. You know, there's no work-life balance anymore. It's the text from your son that says, "Love you, Dad, send me $100." You know, like whatever those things are, they're coming at us constantly. So the ability for us to actually just chill is getting harder and harder. And I explain it like this, right? And once again, I'm talking to people my age. So if there's any younger people on the call, yeah, cool. You'll get this, right? So if you're young, you've started your first job, right? You go to work and it's fantastic and you're loving it, and the Christmas break comes along. By the time you get to the car park in the office, you're on holiday. You're so relaxed and you're gone. Your 3-week holidays feels like 3 months, right? The last holiday you went on, how was it? Takes you 2 weeks to unattach your cell phone. Takes you a week just not to answer your email. Takes you a week to get over the guilt of not, you know. And by the time you just start chilling, boom, you're back to work. Yeah. And that's because stress and anxiety and all the things that we do is accumulative. You know, you've got to get rid of these things on a daily basis and keep recharging your batteries. Because if you don't, then it accumulates. And the stress keeps accumulating. You keep running out of time, you know. The long-winded answers. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's so coincidental. I was just reading a book this morning, Robin Sharma book, and he talked about exactly that same thing, how people get caught up in the grind of day-to-day stuff, the work and all that sort of thing, and think because they're really working big, long days, they're being very productive, but the really productive people work short days and know how to turn off, and it follows in exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, I guess just going back to that last question, JK, because I know there are parents watching this today and will be watching it in the future, and they're careful about their children and all that sort of thing, and it sounds like generally there's not a lot of outward signs there to look for. Other than, you know, how you talk about maybe the eyes are a little bit different than normal. Is there any other telltale signs in some of the actions that they do that might be giving family members or workmates or people around them some clues that they might need to be tapped on the shoulder?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are. We can hide it pretty well, and that they're the ones at highest risk. I wrote a book called Stand By Me about parenting mental health in the home, because although I'd suffered, I wanted to know how I could parent it. And it was really easy, but really, really interesting, because, and you parents that have got teenagers at the moment, you know, you come home and, "Oh, how are you going, mate?" "Good." "Oh, what'd you get up to at school today?" "Not much." "Oh, what's going on in your world?" "Too many questions, Dad." You know, like, woo. So it's really, really hard to actually, you know, engage with them, right? So one day I come home and go, "Oh, up to, G." They go, "Ooh, awkward, Dad." And, you know, and I'm going, well, if I can't use your language, how do we sort of connect, you know? And so I did this book, and I walked in and spoke to a group of, you know, 15, 16 and 17-year-olds. And I walked in like that and I went, "Up to, you know, what's up to, bros?" You know, and they just went, "Awkward, middle-aged white guy trying to speak our language. You're kidding me." And they gave it to me. And so my question to them was, well, you know, when I come home and I ask you a question, like, "How are you?" You go, "Nothing," or grunt. "So how do I communicate?" And they said, "Well, the interesting thing about you parents is when you get home, you think we want to talk," right? But actually, we've just been listening to adults all day and we're over that, right? And then sometimes when we're ready to talk, you don't know the signs and you're on your phone or too busy, which I thought was really interesting and really, really challenging. So that night I went home and I spoke to my kids about it, and we just made some rules around how we were going to communicate. And those rules were, boy, if you text me, I might, because you know, if I'm coaching a rugby team or, you know, running Ray White's and you're about to do a bloody big deal, you're probably going to take the deal, or the rugby team's about to run out, you're not going to be able to reply. But they just need to know that. And the first person I reply to is you guys. Then the second thing that was really, really important, and this is what the child psychiatrist and psychologist told me, is you're the parent, make the rules, right? But at the dinner table, they're your rules. So no phones, or back in my day, it was my kids wearing hats like that, you know. Whatever the rules are at the dinner table, that's it. But what you need to do as a parent is show vulnerability. I went, ooh, you know, that's a bit harder. And they say, well, you don't have to cry the first night, but you can say things like I'm really stressed at work. Because if you show vulnerability, what does that give everyone else the right to do? And it was show vulnerability, right? And so it transformed the relationship with my teenage kids, because I started showing vulnerability. And it was amazing, some of the answers that they came up with. And once you start building that vulnerability, then people start sharing, right? And young males go through periods of, you know, grunting, and that's pretty normal. But once they sort of start understanding that it's a safe place, then they start sharing some of their vulnerabilities, and it starts small and then it builds. So, you know, I think from a behavioral point of view for our kids, you know, teenagers are going to lock themselves in their room and they're not going to come out, and it's going to be messy and smelly and whatever that is. But if you start seeing some psychological changes in them, like it's more aggressive, it's more getting locked away, you do need to step in, and don't be scared to reach out to their friends as well. Your mum and dad, you have every single right. They're still under your roof. Some people, I don't want to, you know, and it's a hard one to do, but the best thing is to keep stepping in, keep trying to reach out to them if you think you can see them making some changes, and you know your partner, your kids better than I would, so you'll know what those changes are. And then don't be scared to wrap around whatever you can to try and help them. So it's a scary time, but nowadays, you know, there's so much more pressure on our youngsters. I think that talking about mental health and talking about tools that help, talking about things that you can do to switch off, you know, there's way more pressure on them than there was on us. You know, like success for me was a Maury 1000 van when I left school, and I lent the money off dad and I had to pay him back with interest. You know, now success is, you know, a Rolls Royce convertible. And, you know, do you think Mama Cass would have made it as a singer today? Probably young people don't even know who Mama Cass is, but, you know, even the singers have got to be beautiful and everything's got to be in the right places. So there's so much more pressure on our youngsters to know, you know, what success is and what that looks like. And I think there's so many more discussions we have to have as parents around taking some of those unrealistic expectations away from them and talking about it openly. I mean, you ever see anyone ugly on Facebook? It's beautiful, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. How does that work? Yeah, exactly. And that's just the world they live in, and they're getting these messages all day. I mean, you know, when I didn't get invited to a party at school, I didn't find out 8 or Monday and didn't really care. Whereas these guys got, you know, TikTok coming at them, you know, photos, and so they feel isolated and missing out. And this popularity thing, which we all did growing up, is just magnified. So it's way more complex for us to parent. You know, I said, you know, my dad, you know, basically he would catch me all the time. So, you know, when he'd go away, he knew that I was going to drink his whiskey, smoke mum's cigarettes, try and drive his car and sleep in his bed, right? And he caught me all the time, basically, because he did the same stuff. Yeah. Like, we're only a generation apart. So he could parent me way better because we're only a generation apart. But we are not equipped to parent our kids in the world they live in because we don't know it. Mm-hmm. So my suggestion is you've got to try and step into that void, understand what it is, understand the pressures and stuff, but it's not easy. So getting help as well is also important. I had a parent, some parents the other day whose 18-year-old son is struggling a wee bit, and I said, ring a psychiatrist and go and sit down, you and your husband, right? Get the knowledge that you need. You know, you don't get someone in Ray Y who's starting to do their, you know, starting to sell real estate. You don't just throw them in the deep end. You know, they've got to do their course, they've got their qualifications. You probably put them with someone that's got the experience. So I think this new world is difficult to parent in.
Yeah, yeah, amen. I should have mentioned at the beginning too that we do take questions. People can come on live if they like or put something in the chat box for you as well. So hopefully that's okay with you, JK.
Yeah, sweet as. I've just got one here actually. What impact do you think social media has on our young people? I think the cell phone in general and everything that it's brought to us is something that we need to train for. So basically, you know, this is dopamine. I'm struggling to control it, right? So in my downtimes, I'm struggling to pick it up because you are expecting to get some good news or get that dopamine hit. And you know, some companies do it on purpose. So what's happening with our youngsters is that expectation, like I said to you about the Maury van, that expectation's through the roof, right? Because you only get success put at you. Everyone's got to go to university now. You know, everyone's got to, there's all this pressure on. So social media, I think, is something that you need to discuss around the dinner table, and you need to show vulnerability, because how do you parent your child around social media if you don't know what that social media pressure is putting on them? And so, you know, getting to understand that by asking open-ended questions. Another great book that I read was Unlearned. What's it called? Unlearned. I did it to play rugby, and it changed the relationship with my son, and the name just escapes me. It'll come back to me. But basically what this was not having, because I was a reloader as a parent, right? You came to me with a problem, I would be trying to solve it for you because that's what my parents did, right? But my son was just going, what is this idiot talking about? Because how can I try and solve a problem when I don't actually know the issues around the problem, right? And like all things modern, social media is a really good medium for communication, and it is a big part of their communication. But it's not the only way you connect. It's not the only way you should be doing things around your connection as a person. So for me, it's really Learned Optimism was the name of the book. It's a really hard book to read, but what it did is, instead of me trying to solve my kids' problems, I'd ask them questions to get to the answer together. And often the hardest thing for me would be to say, shit, I don't know. I don't know, but how can I help you on that journey? And, you know, can we get someone external to help you? Because it's very hard as a parent, because you want to give the answers.
Let's find out together, eh?
Yeah, but hard to do as a parent, right? I think that, easier said, but bloody hard to do, because you feel as if you should be trying to help them. Yeah. But they don't care, actually. What I found retrospectively is they don't care as long as they know that you're there with them trying to help them solve the issue. Just for them to share an issue with you in the first place is what I call a psychological safety bridge. You know, often with our children, you've got to build that trust and psychological safety around some of the shit that they're going through, because when you think back, and we don't do this often, I didn't talk to my parents from the age of 13 to 23, probably.
Yeah. All right. Hey, you're wearing the T-shirt. I need you to tell us all about Groove. What's the story behind Groove?
I woke up 5 years ago, and I felt like I'd been an absolute failure. So failure was one of my sharks once upon a time, but now it's the greatest teacher I have. And I love looking for it and finding it, because it's a tough teacher, but it's the best teacher I've had. So I woke up one morning, I read the newspaper, and on one side of it was our suicide rates. So by the end of today, a New Zealand male will be dead by suicide. By tomorrow evening, 2 males and 1 female. And last year, 800,000 people committed suicide around the world. So we have 2 pandemics. One's called COVID, the other one's called our suicide rate. But I'd been the face of this for 15 years. And on the other side was the government is putting mental health into the Health and Safety Act, right? Which basically means this is a massive big hole. They can't afford to pay for it by themselves, and so they're going to pass some of that responsibility over to the workplace. So what I did is I did 2 things. I wanted to, so all the things, all the tools and techniques that I've learned to keep me incredibly well every single day. So I'm thriving. And thriving doesn't mean that I'm not low some days and unhappy and all those things. That doesn't mean that. It just means I've got the tools to get through that and stay resilient. So what I wanted to was actually try and deliver what I'd learned into the workplace, right? And we do that by empowering individuals. So remember the 80s? Everyone smoked. Everyone had a dart, love a dart, have a dart and a fag, and right? By the end of the 80s, we're starting to get educated around maybe this isn't that good for us, and maybe we shouldn't smoke. And those that smoke now, that's their choice, but they probably know the consequences. Mental health's like that right today. So everyone actually needs a daily mental health plan to deal with the things that's throwing them. So empower the individuals, then lift the leaders, right? Why are we talking about mental health? Because actually this needs to be just what we do every single day. Because I firmly believe that if leaders put this genuinely on the agenda, then we're going to have happier people. Happier people are going to be more productive, right? You're going to retain the people that you want, and your environment's going to be great, but it needs to be well-being led, right? So I was very, very fortunate to meet my business partner, Adam Clark, and I said to him, I'd like to create a SaaS product that digitally delivers this to the workplace because I don't want the end user to pay. And I want to actually have all these tools that these people need delivered. And I believe that will change our stats over a 5 to 10 year period. And he said, I said, I want to reach 2,456,000 people. And he went, wow, why is that? And I said, that's the workforce in New Zealand. And he said, okay, I think it's a worldwide problem. Let's try and reach 100 million people and save 100,000 lives. So that's what we're doing. We have a digital suite of products that goes into the workplace, that empowers the individual, lifts the leaders, and optimizes the environment around genuine mental health well-being, right? So what is well-being? Is it the free yoga classes? Is it the fruit bowl on the office desk? It's actually a bit more complicated than that. So what we've done is we've been going 4 years now. We gave away the app free during COVID, but we have a suite of digital tools that you can put into the workplace. On the other side of things, to deal with the one flew over the cuckoo's nest, I raised $350,000 and we created Mighty. So I facilitated for a year. We now have a curriculum-based primary school program that actually educates our children around the IQ and the EQ of mental health. And so that's been incredibly successful. We've been going 3 years now. We're in 70 schools. We've treated it like a business. So we've tested it, broken it, reinvented it. The three things that are very important from that is we send a teacher into the schools so that we don't put any additional pressure on the human resource or financial resource of the school. They upskill the teachers and implement the curriculum into the school, so it'll be long lasting. And the third thing is it's co-designed, so that if we go into a school in South Auckland and it's Pacifica or Māori or a combination, then we co-design it for that school. If we go into a school in Takapuna, we co-design it for them. If we're in a school in Invercargill, we co-design it for them. So that's been really successful. We've got 70 schools. We've got a 300 on our waiting list, and our goal is to reach all 1,200 schools. And then I think our goal for Mighty is to go from the worst mental health in the developed world to the best. And I think that will take a generation. So a generation for me is 10 years. And I believe if we do Groove, which is it's a business, we want to be a profitable business. We want to prove out those things, because when we do that, then the world of business will take it. I was with a business leader the other day, and he goes, well-being is one of our strategic leads. I said, fantastic. It's one of our strategic things moving forward. I said, oh, cool. But he didn't have any budget next to it. So it's not your strategic pillar, right? But I say this to all the leaders in the world. Bill Gates came across the Canadian border 40 years ago, and he had Microsoft in his pocket. And he said, I'm going to put a computer on everyone's desk. And he's done it. I mean, we're using that now. And then Steve Jobs comes along a few days, I'm going to give everyone one of these. did a pretty bloody good job, right? But we don't actually need any more technology in our life. We actually need to learn the basics of mental health to deal with this world so that we can stay well.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple more questions. Shall I read them?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah, the notifications are really cool. Just someone just saying that they've been using the podcast and downloaded the app, which is really cool. With mental illness, to those outside, you look fine, you perhaps seem fine and all is normal, but inside you're not fine. How do you make others aware of what you're going through inside? Yeah, that's a really great question. One of the scariest things I ever did was tell someone. And it was the greatest thing that I ever did. The first person I told me to harden up. We're still great mates, but he said to me, JK, I didn't know what to bloody say. I'm not the expert, right? And when at Groove in the workplace, we talk about building psychological bridges, right? So I'll give you a couple of things. We got time, or are you running out of time? How long are we supposed to be doing this?
We're fine, mate.
Are we?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll tell you a couple of things if you've got a pen, right? I've prepared for you guys a PowerPoint, so get ready. I'm going to beam it up onto your screen. So what is Groove? Here it is.
Yeah.
It's feeling good and functioning well, right? And you think about, I want you to ask this question today. When are you in your groove? Okay. When I'm in my groove, I'm at peace at home and the wife and kids are good, right? And I know when I'm in my groove, I'm creative. Yeah. So I'm creative. I'm curious, really interested in all of you on the call today. I'm really interested in your lives, what you're doing, how you're dealing with shit. I'm optimistic. Is that how you spell it?
Yep.
Cool. That's why I put that smiley face. Right? You know about my sharks. I've got no sharks. My sharks aren't skirting me around, you know? I don't have any doubt. My imposter syndrome's are good. Don't have a lot of guilt. But I think it's really interesting. How do you stay in your groove? And I call it my AAA battery. So you know those little AAA batteries, right?
Yeah.
AAA battery. So what I do is you need to be aware of why you're not in the groove. You need to acknowledge it, and then you need to act. Okay. So what we talk about is, and you should write this down. Dot. You know what that means? Do one thing. That's all you need to do. One thing. You know how you join the gym, you go to the gym, well, you work out. I haven't been to the gym for 3 months. You work out so hard you can't even sit down on the toilet. And you don't go back for 3 months, right? Yeah. So I don't want you to go and do 100 things. I just want you to do one thing, right? Do one thing. And then once you've done that, do that. Do another thing. And slowly build your mental health thing. But getting back to your question, what I want you to do is start sharing your dots at work, because then you have a psychological safety bridge. You don't feel safe sharing how you're feeling inside because of the old stigma that came with it, right? There's an old stigma. I might not get promoted. People might look down on me. They might think I'm weak and can't handle it. That's all rubbish. But you still have to have a psychological safety bridge. So if you start talking about your groove at work and you start talking about your dot, you know, what did you do? You know, what did you do this morning for your mental health? Did you read a book? Did you? Is that what you said this morning? You read a book? Yeah, right. Yeah. That could be your dot, and you start sharing your dots, and that builds a psychological safety bridge. But if you share some of that stuff at work, then you are feeling safe, and those around you don't be the experts, people. If someone reaches out, all you need to do is don't give them the answers, right? Because you're not the psychiatrist or psychologist. Just know that you have their back. That is teamwork. You say, what do you need to get through this period of time? Is there anything I can do for you? You know, it might be, wow, I wish you could drive me to an appointment or come with me because I'm nervous and embarrassed. There'll be those little things. So, you know, I think it's really hard to share, but once you start sharing, people say, oh yeah, I can help. And you'll feel that, you know, you'll feel that support around you, which is really, really important, especially in the workplace. Because like I said, there's no work-life balance anymore.
Yeah. It's tremendous advice, JK. Hey, let's talk about your foundation now. Slightly different little direction there, but tell us about that. And yeah, how did that come about?
So it was sort of born around, I went to, unfortunately, talk to a group of mates whose friend had committed suicide, and I went and spoke to them about some of the things that they will need to do while grieving. And the guy said to me, "Oh, can you come and talk to my son? You know, he's got some anxiety and he's got, you know, I think he might be getting a bit depressed." I went, "Oh, yeah, sweet. No problems." And he said, "I'll go and get him from school." So I walked out expecting to see my 16 or 17-year-old son. The boy was 9.
Wow.
Yeah. Blew me out. No, totally out of my depth. Didn't know what to say to him. Then very quickly, I believe in fate. I was down the West Coast the next day talking to firemen because they're first responders now in a lot of suicides. And I was in the West Coast community, and I told this story to a child psychologist who was working as a teacher and a help aide. And she said, "You give me that child and in 6 months' time, I can turn that around." I went, "Really?" And so I started investigating around some of the things that we need to teach our children. So, you know, I raised that money, we facilitated, then I raised a bit more money. We commissioned the Auckland University to build a curriculum around the IQ and the EQ of mental health. So when a child starts at 5, what do they need to learn to then start building a really, really solid mental health awareness of themselves, but also how do they, when they get, you know, to the social media, when they get bullied on social media, they've actually got the resilience to deal with that. And it's really interesting. I often ask this question: what is love? People look at me and think, "Oh, where's this going?" You know, and I get 25 different answers, and they're all correct. But I remember an Italian priest telling me, right, and it's never left me. He said, "JK, love is a verb. It's a doing word." And I went, "Wow, that's cool," you know. And a lot of the emotional words that we have around us are verbs, and you need to have what they stand for under. And resilience is another one. I asked a whole bunch of kids, you know, what's resilience? I said, "Oh, that's that shit word our parents use." Because it means nothing unless you've got an action plan under it. So if we're going to educate our children moving forward, they are going to get bullied. They are going to have to deal with social media. So what are the tools that we are giving them so that they can walk through that with the tools that they need? And a lot of it's about making sure they have very, very strong inner mana, understanding what that is, having self-worth, you know, making sure they love themselves. And so we created this curriculum and we've put it into the schools. We, like I said, our model is putting coaches into the schools to upskill the school. And we've got 7 teachers at the moment and 70 schools, and I'm about to raise some more money because the other challenge for me is making this sustainable on a national level. I think it's cost between $11 to $15 million a year to educate our children in 1,200 primary schools. And the interesting argument we had when we started facilitating this was, why don't we put it into secondary schools? Well, it's too late.
Yeah.
They need to learn this thing by the time they get there, because that's when they need it. So that's called Mighty. And yeah, we're trucking along pretty good, and some of the feedback is unbelievable.
Can I ask, the government come into the party with you on this, or what? You know, a lot of money thrown at mental health.
Yeah. I haven't. Yes, they know what I'm doing, but I haven't asked them for money yet, because what I want to be able to do is make this sustainable, prove out that it's world-class and world-changing, which is what we want to do with Groove and what I want to do with Mighty. We've just had Zurich, the big insurance company from Switzerland, come down, and they've been searching for something like this. So they've invested $1 million into the organization, because I think it could go other places of the world. So I will go to the government and I will ask them to match, but I'm also interested in this public-private solution for actually social cause. So I'm just working through, how would I make this sustainable? Because it's really, really hard to keep shaking the pot, you know, keep asking people for money. I've had some incredibly generous people give us a lot of money. So yeah, that's one thing I'm working through at the moment, because I want this to be sustainable, but I also want to keep the right people having some control over, because we break it a lot and remake it, because that's what you need to do in the modern world.
Yeah, yeah, certainly do.
Did you find difficult transition from high performance sport to another phase of life, a new direction? And if so, what helped you change? Yeah, I did. That was really difficult for me. And I think, I had to be really honest with myself, and I was safe where I was. Rugby is what I knew. So changing from being a rugby coach and being in rugby all my life was where I was safe. I wasn't that good at it either, to be fair. But I went and saw a guy who's always been lovely to me, very high profile New Zealander. And he said to me, JK, what are you doing in that silly game? And I went, well, I think I'm actually hiding, mate. And he said, well, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to save people's lives through the experience I've had with mental health. And he said, well, go and do that. So high performance sport, what I was doing, transition was the scariest thing I've ever done. But, if you think about courage, what is courage? Courage for me was addressing my dumb shark. Am I good enough to do this? Addressing my comfortable shark. Do I want to, after failing at the Blues, do I want to go and live in the north of England and be a coach again? Do I want to go to the south of France? What's my real passion? I practice what I preach. I used to say to my kids, don't work a day in your life, right? Because if you love what you do, you'll be fine. So yeah, I think being safe in high performance sport for me, and then changing it out and changing my life, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I also have a growth mindset. Well, I told myself I did, but if I was comfortable in rugby because I was too scared to grow, learn, and get better, then I wasn't actually living my own sort of mantra. So yeah, that was cool.
JK, from a personal perspective, that journey where you were coaching for those years, and I think you're a bit tough on yourself saying you weren't successful. But anyway, that aside, what were the big takeaways from that part of your life that you've applied now?
Well, I think the interesting thing is, like I said, failure is your greatest teacher. And sometimes we shy away from it. But my biggest learnings was I think I was really, really ahead of the game when I was coaching Italy and coaching Japan. When I came down to New Zealand, I tried to be something that I wasn't, because that's what the environment asked me to do. And I didn't have the courage to stay aligned to what I do. I'm not a good technical coach. In fact, it bores me to tears. But I love building inspirational environments with a big vision, right? So there was 3 things that I believe made me unsuccessful at the Blues. I got away from my strengths and I tried to be something I wasn't. So I tried to be a technical coach. The second thing is I didn't understand any of the players because I'd been away for 12 years. So my selection was off at the beginning to pick the type of players for the environment you want to build. Right? So that was the second mistake. And the third mistake was I didn't have the ability under pressure to step back and see what the problems actually were. So as the pressure got on top of me, I was very well mentally, so it was just a normal work pressure, so I wasn't suffering mentally because I have a strong daily mental health plan, but that pressure narrowed my vision. And so I think those 3 things were the biggest learnings for me. And if I had have gone back into coaching, I'm pretty sure that I would have got it right and actually, got better as a coach. So
you must have had pretty good coping mechanisms in those times, because I remember around that Blues coaching period, you were copping heaps of shit in the press. The heat was immense, and you on the outside anyway, you looked like you were coping okay.
Look, I think I wasn't coping with what was happening. No. Right? I was coping, but I remember coming home one night and my wife said to me, "This is killing you. You need to get out of this." Right? Wow. Yeah, I don't like the way it's affecting you. So that was pretty big message, right? I think the other thing is that what I learned was, and this is really, really cool, I'm not my emotions, I'm my values. Right? I'm not my emotions, I'm my values.
Great word.
And sometimes we worry too much about our emotions, but if you sit with them and let them through, and get back to your values, you'll be fine. When do we feel uncomfortable? It's when our values aren't aligned with our actions.
Yeah.
And so I was uncomfortable towards the end because the values of who I was compared to what I was doing and the environment I was in was not aligned, right? And so it was a values decision in the end. I took up coaching to give every young person the opportunity that I had to be the best rugby player they could, but also to change. Look, I'm a butcher from Mangere. I've lived in Japan for 10 years. I've lived in Italy, right? And I started to get away from that. So I was uncomfortable, but I was too scared to admit that to myself. But when my wife said to me, "This is killing you," I had to sit back and go, well, why am I not happy? And it's because my values weren't aligned with my actions and the environment that I was in. And so in the end, it was a very, very painful but easy decision once. Because sometimes, when I talk about my triple A battery, how often do we just keep going without actually taking that step back?
Yeah. Well, mate, any regrets? Any so far in your life? Any?
No, I don't have any regrets. I don't believe in them. I don't believe in failure. I don't believe in regrets. I don't believe in yesterday or worrying about it. And I don't believe too much in tomorrow. You were probably a little bit stressed on whether I was actually going to turn up at 11.
I was actually. Yeah.
I get one email and I said, she's all good. I don't waste time or energy on things that I cannot control. One of the first things I learned was a worry map. And it's what can I control, what can't I control, what can I do and what I can't do. And I do that all the time. So I've had a privileged, great life. I'm actually thankful that I went through a depression, believe it or not that I wish it on anyone. I'm really pleased I got the sack from the Blues. Like I said, failure has been my best teacher and it's inspired me to change and get better. And so don't worry about yesterday. Can anyone out there tell me what's going to happen tomorrow? Not unless you're God. Really. So I'm just going to be the greatest me that I can be today. And then I'll worry about tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of unfinished business in you, mate, and you're a real inspiration to so many people. And I know there's going to be a lot of people catch this and watch it at a later date, and I think will be a lot of people that have watched it today recommending it to a lot of people. So look, on behalf of everyone, I want to say a massive, massive thank you. I know how busy you are and how many people are pulling at you and trying to get a piece of you. And we just feel so blessed to have had the opportunity for you to come and share your thoughts and your experiences with us. Really, really appreciate it, JK. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. But I have one thing you have to do for me, all of you.
What is it?
My beautiful mum passed away 4 years ago.
Right.
And her and I used to have these amazing arguments about her paying for her own funeral, right? And the cask and all that sort of stuff. And I used to take her, there'd be an ad for a flax coffin and the hero. No, I don't want that. The worms will eat me, But anyway, I remember we decided on her casket and she passed away. And we had a beautiful funeral, and Mum only wanted cream donuts, sausage rolls, scones with lots of butter at the aftermatch. But at the aftermatch, everyone came up to me and said, we loved your mum. I said, yeah, I love my mum too. Why did you love my mum? And every one of them said the same thing. They said, she gave us time. She looked us in the eyes, and it was like we were the only people that lived. And I promised my mum that day that I would give people time. That's why I'm on this podcast with you. But my challenge to you all is I want you to give yourself and someone else some time today. Because what does this modern world take away from us? Time. So you need to take it back. And all I want you to do is ring someone you love and just tell them that you love them, or find some time for you just to go for a walk, or just whatever that might be. And there'll be lots of things pulling against that. Should I've got to catch up with my emails? I've got to make, no. Find some time for you and find some time to give to someone else. And then you will make my day. Been a pleasure.
Wonderful words. Thank you very, very much, mate.
Bye.
Cheers.